Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today's June 9th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, as you guys may know, the Ukrainian counteroffensive has started in Zaporizhia. And so the Ukrainians are attacking the Russian positions or the first line of contact for the last couple of days. And now the heaviest of fighting right now is happening very close to the Tokmak district in the settlement of Robotine. A lot of heavy fighting here, as you can see. So in this image, you can see the amount of defenses that the Russians have prepared. And right now, the Ukrainians are trying to break through the first line of contact, and as well in Stepove Pyatekhatki on the very left side of this map. So right now, the goal is to get to the city of Tokmak. And I share with you an image of today on YouTube on the community post of a alleged prisoner of war, Russian prisoner of war, where he claimed that the Ukrainians have entered close to Tokmak, but I think he's mentioning the district, because the city, I highly doubt the Ukrainians would have been able to break through within the last few days within the city. And I think that the region of Tokmak encompasses a much larger area, as you can see here, that is very close to Robotine. So I think that the Ukrainians are successfully breaking through the first line of contact of the Russians, but they're definitely nowhere close to the city of Tokmak. That's, I think, for sure, because you're seeing the amount of defenses that the Russians have prepared here. There's just no way that the Ukrainians are going to be able to do a shock and awe attack here. And I think I've made it very clear in my last few videos. Even a few months ago, I was talking about the fact that this Ukraine counteroffensive is probably going to be long, and it's not going to be shock and awe. It's not going to be Kharkiv counteroffensive. The Russians have had a lot of time, a very minimum, at the very least since September of last year, to prepare the defenses once they saw how quickly they collapsed in Kharkiv. And so, yeah, this is going to be a very long and difficult fight for the Ukrainians. And the offensive side is going to be taking losses. As you can see in this picture, the Russians didn't shy away from showing the first losses of the Ukrainian army on this front. And you can see that, yes, these are Bradleys and Leopard 2s. And the Ukrainians have confirmed to have lost already 3 of them, Leopard 2s and 5 Bradleys. And I want to just send you the truth, guys. I'm not going to, beat around the bush and try to avoid this topic. The Ukrainians are going to be incurring losses, unfortunately. There was also demining tank, and honestly, it sucks to see. I'm not going to lie, but it's part of the offensive. The offensive side is always going to be incurring more losses. Historically speaking, that's the way it goes. But one thing that makes me very confident here is the fact that the Ukrainian army is not the Russian army. Let's take, for example, Chornobaivka. You guys have heard about Chornobaivka. It's the airport that the Russians held for so many months when they captured Kherson, and they kept on doing the same thing over and over again, bringing all the vehicles there, stationing their soldiers, their helicopters, and they knew that the Ukrainians had the artillery range to hit them, and they constantly hit them. It became a running joke, right? Chornobaivka. Constantly, hundreds of times they got hit there, and they kept on doing the same thing, right? Not thinking perhaps we should do it differently. Maybe we should, station ourselves further away, or perhaps not even get close to Chornobaivka. No, they kept on doing the same thing. And Ukraine doesn't have the same mentality. I think that they're trying to be modern, they're trying to be up to NATO standards, and there is such a thing as after-action review for the Ukrainian army, right? The Ukrainian army, if this was a failed mission, which seems like it was, and it seemed like this was a mobile kill, meaning that they most likely destroyed these vehicles, but the Ukrainians got out of there safe. I'm not seeing any, dead soldiers, thank God, or if there was any casualties, they were minimal, thanks to the great protection that these vehicles offer. So, if this was a failed mission, then the Ukrainian soldiers for sure got back to camp and discussed what went wrong. And I think that this is the advantage in Ukrainian armies, that everybody has a say, and that it's not just going to be finger pointing, it's your fault, it's your fault. It's like, what went wrong? And seeing the factors that affected the failure of this mission. And that's why I have confidence in, is that the Ukrainian army is always able to adapt. And this is a new offensive for them, right? The Kharkiv and Kherson offensives were completely different, and this one is completely different due to the amount of defenses that the Russians have. They have eyes everywhere. They have drones, they have artillery that already knows where they're supposed to hit. They have helicopters flying around. This is extremely difficult. This is going to be a very difficult task. But the Ukrainians are going to be motivated because this is their land and our land. So I have, complete confidence in the Ukrainian army doing their thing here. And so let's take a look at the map. So I discussed in my previous video, they attacked around Novodonetsk, close to Velika Novosilka. We don't have much news here. However, now I discussed the attack towards Robotine. So it's right around here. So the Ukrainians are closing into this town. This settlement, I am very certain of it because the Russians are already saying that the fights here are ongoing and it's very difficult. And the goal is to get to Tokmak, and that might take a few weeks for the Ukrainians based on the amount of defenses and the very thick second line of defense that the Russians have right about here. So it's getting to Tokmak. The second offensive in this area is in Stepove, Pyatakhatke, Lobkove, where the Ukrainians are applying pressure. And I think here is all about getting to Vasilivka and then pushing towards Enerhodar. I think what we've seen on June 6th of what the Russians committed, this horrible ecocide, I think now we realize what the Russians would be capable of in Enerhodar. So I think the goal now is taking back Enerhodar and driving out the Russians because honestly, I don't want to think of what the Russians would be able to do if we would allow them to take, control permanently over this power station, especially with the water levels going down here due to the Novakakhovka Dam, obviously breaking, being destroyed by the Russians, and the level of water upstream is definitely going down now, and it's being noticed by all the locals. So right now, that's the goal, I think, and that's my opinion. It could change, but the next couple of days are going to be very important for the Ukrainians to start breaking through this first line of contact, the first line of defense that the Russians have. And I'm going to share with you a video with what appears the Russians also fleeing their positions. It's unclear again where exactly that is, but the Russians are also feeling the pressure, and I think that very soon enough we're going to start seeing a lot of confirmations of Ukrainians taking back some settlements on this entire front. But it is very difficult, and give your praise and thoughts to the heroic Ukrainian soldiers that are losing their lives right now, because it's difficult. Now, for the second presentation. So now there's reports, you guys know about the Novakakhovka Dam. Now the Ukrainian intelligence is saying that this could have been Putin giving personally this order to destroy the Kakhovka Dam. And so we all knew already, it's been talked about for many months, that the Russians have mined this facility ever since they got there. And there's been multiple confirmations last few months about it. But now the Ukrainian intelligence is certain that this order was implemented at the very highest level, and they think it was Putin who gave the order of doing this. And I'm saying that it's very possible that this could very well be Putin, but I also think that we shouldn't underestimate the stupidity of the Russian army. And this could very well be, the group of men inside Novakakhovka just telling themselves, let's just try to do it, right? Because from what I told you in my previous videos, that allegedly they meant to just break a small part of the dam just to flood the Ukrainian positions downstream close to Kherson. This was the goal, at least from the pro-Russian Telegram channels. And they said that they just broke a small part of the dam in order to flood the Ukrainians. But now, realizing the scale of devastation, they start pointing the fingers at the Ukrainians. And so I think that a theory of mine could be that this could be a group of drunk Russian soldiers in the facility who just decide to have some fun and destroy the dam a little bit, but then they realize the scale of devastation and what they just committed. And I think that the biggest issue right now, one of the largest problems, is the West still considers Russia as this respectable nation, right? And I think you guys, if I was to ask Georgie from Ukraine Matters what his perspective on Russia was before the war, I think it would be much more positive. At least, Russia, not necessarily great, but not bad. They're a grand nation, largest country in the world, right? There was some sort of, I guess, from most Westerners, there was a sort of respect that they gave to the Russian people and the Russian society, right? But we've seen the last year and a half what they've been able to commit. It's a terrorist nation. The Nova Kakhovka Dam drew a line between normal, at least, an authoritarian regime controlling a society that is oppressed to a terrorist nation. I've seen the rejoicing from the Russian population after they've seen what happened in Kherson on June 6th. I've seen them being absolutely ecstatic, right? Having fun out of the misery of the Ukrainian people, even to the point that now they're shelling the Ukrainians trying to rescue their own in Kherson. And the Russians are completely fine with doing that. It's a terrorist nation. It's a terrorist nation, and we need to approve that. We need to understand that, and that there's no more negotiations with Russia. And now it's a monkey with a grenade that literally holds a nuclear power station, and they could very well blow it up. And now Europe, it's not really, the Nova Kakhovka Dam doesn't really concern them. But what if the nuclear power station blows up? You can't just protect yourself with a little umbrella from the radiation. And I'm looking at Europe right now. What are you going to do then? Are you going to start pointing fingers? We don't know what happened. Let's look at the facts. It could be very well the Ukrainian side. Like, that's my question, right? How is Europe going to react if, God forbid, the Enerhodar power station blows up or is compromised by the Russians? Let's stop treating the Russians with the respect that we think they deserve or whatever, or victimizing the Russians. They're not victims. I've showed you multiple times that 75% of the Russian population supports the war in Ukraine. And it doesn't matter, right? If it's people that are just feeling oppressed or against Putin and they're not sure, the quiet population that doesn't do anything about it, their lack of action is the support of the Russian regime. If you care about your country, by now you would do something about it. And the Russians have done zero, absolutely zero, apart from the small little local raids and Belgorod that, it's good, but it's not going to do anything unless there's a massive backing by the Russian population of that movement. And right now, so far, we haven't seen that, unfortunately. So let's recognize Russia as a terrorist nation, because it is true. At this point, I don't care what you guys say, what anyone says, but it's true. Russia is a terrorist nation. Let's start bringing the facts here, and let's stop giving, credit. Let's, negotiate with Russia. We still can find, a middle ground. No, Russia isn't interested in that. So here's my 5 cents. And lastly, this is a video of what I was talking about. So this is a massive Russian retreat that was caught on the video. It could be from a few days ago, but it is for sure in the south. And you can see that there's about a very minimum, about 30 of them running around the field, leaving their positions, probably heading into that second line of defense somewhere. And there's a lot of them, so it could be more than 30. But they're all running away from the forest, from the posadkas, and most likely running towards the second line of defense. So, the Ukrainians obviously are having losses, but they're also having some wins on that front. So, guys, again, if you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Let me know what you think about what I just said in terms of the Zaporizhia offense, the Ukrainian losses. And do you really think that in terms of the offensive on the east side of Zaporizhia, the Ukrainians are trying also to take hold of Enerhodar? Right, I'm really interested in seeing if you think this would be one of the strategies that Ukrainians currently have. Right, that after seeing what happened in Nova Kakhovka, are the Ukrainians interested in really going this route and taking hold of Enerhodar? So, anyways, thank you again for your support, and I will keep you guys updated next few days. Thank you.